I'm delighted to be here tonight. On Saturday, I wasn't sure I was going to make it. Not because of the weather. About 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, can you hear me? Everybody hear me okay? About 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, I received a telephone call from a gentleman who said that he was from New York and he was a reporter for the New York Times. And he was looking for the man named Don Wetzel who invented the ATM machine. Are you the man? And I said, yes, I am. He said, oh, good. I've been trying to find you now for some time. I'm writing an obituary on you. Now, this is a true story. This is true. Yeah, I'm writing an obituary, and there's some personal things I'd like to ask you about. So you want to know where I was born and all that kind of stuff. So I said, well, do you know something I don't know? He said, no. We like to do this on people that have done some things that changed our culture, and I said, now wait a minute, you're not a hitman, are you? So anyhow, we finished that, and so I'm glad to be here, really, and I hope nothing happens tonight. Do we have detectors come through the door? It's okay, right? Okay, thanks. Well, I look forward to this evening very much because I'm delighted to be here, and if you don't mind, I'd like to start with a prayer. This is a prayer that the chaplain for the New York Police and Fire Department said every day as part of his job. And it goes, Lord, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say, and keep me out of your way. And I say that prayer often, and especially at times like this when I'm in front of some people, because I believe placing our trust in God is very important, and we need to do it more often. It reminds me of a story. One day I was telling one of my sons about the prayer, and I told him about it, and I said, and the reason is because I put my trust in God, and He's there for me when I need Him. He said, Dad, come on. One of the lines in that prayer is, Lord, tell me what you want me to say. And I kind of think that's your escape clause, because if you bomb out in your talk, you can blame it on God. It's not you. Well, that son is no longer in my will. He's gone. And Jennifer said that my wife and I, Eleanor, have 12 children. And I understand there's going to be some questions and answers later. So I'm going to answer 2 of them for you right now that I get all the time. Number 1, 12 children are not cheaper by the dozen. And the other question that I get asked is, is it very difficult to raise 12 children? Does it take its toll? And my answer to that is, when Eleanor and I got married, I was 6'2". So there's no need to ask those kind of questions. Okay, forget that. Well, I'd like to start by giving you a short history of my business career. I graduated from Loyola in New Orleans with a business degree, and I was fortunate to get a job with IBM. And actually it was with a subsidiary company of IBM called the Service Bureau Corporation. And what we did was, we didn't sell IBM machines at that time. We didn't have computers. we processed applications on our own machines for companies who didn't have IBM. And at that time, I was rather naive, but I was very ambitious. I wanted to climb up the ladder of success badly. I wanted name recognition, and I wanted to make a lot of money. And I thought I was with the right company, and I was. I worked there for 5 years, and I got promoted to be the Service Bureau Manager in Fort Worth, Texas. That's a big move for somebody in New Orleans because we're very provincial over there. You know, we're born and raised and we die in New Orleans. And I was the first person in my family who ever left New Orleans. And when I told my mom that I was offered this job over in Fort Worth, she said, "Oh, isn't that nice? Oh, that's wonderful. They recognize that you're doing a good job. But I'm sure that another one will come up that, that'll be better." I said, "Mom, I took the job." Well, she almost fainted because people over there don't do that. Anyhow, I went to Fort Worth. I was there, and while I was in Fort Worth, about 6 months later, I got married. And in the Service Bureau Corporation, we worked many nights during the week and often on weekends. So, you didn't get home much. And I was beginning to see that, I'd like to get home. This job is really, I'm not sure it's right for me. I get a call from my boss in New York. He said, "I want to come on down and talk to you." And usually, that's bad news. He came down, and this was about a year and a half after I was in Fort Worth. He said, "We want you to go to Denver to be the manager up there." Now, I'd given a lot of thought about what my future might look like. And I said, "No, I don't want to go to Denver. In fact, I want to get out of the Service Bureau." Well, you want to see an angry man, this was one. Nevertheless, he said, "Okay," and he exiled me down to San Antonio. At that time, I'd never been anywhere in Texas other than Fort Worth, and I thought, San Antonio, wow, horse-driven carts, cobblestone streets. This is really going to be bad news. Of course, San Antonio wasn't like that at all. So for 2 years, I was what we called at IBM, systems engineer. Now, I'm not an engineer. I had a business degree. But we installed the equipment that the IBM salesman sold. And I did that for 2 years, and I worked primarily with one salesman, and we became very good personal friends. After 2 years, I was having lunch with him one day, and he said, "You need to go into sales." Now, I never sold anything. I never even had a paper route. He convinced me that, if I really wanted a big future in the IBM Corporation, you had to get in sales. If you want to get in management, you had to be a salesman. So I decided, okay, if they'll let me do that, I'll become a salesman. I did become a salesman. I did that for 2 years, had a fair amount of success, and I was working in the financial industry only. Prior to, I guess this was in 1959. Prior to that, we had geographic territories, but now we had industry territories. So I called on nothing but banks, savings and loans, credit unions, etc. So I had 2 good years. And I was fortunate to get promoted. I became a special representative in banking for the district and covering 4 states working with the local salespeople. So I packed the family. I had 3 kids at that time. So we packed up and we moved to Dallas. IBM, you might think IBM stands for International Business Machines. No, it stands for I've been moved. So I go to Dallas, and I'm covering a territory of 4 states, calling on all the banks and all with the local salespeople. And that was the time when things were going well. You know, everything was moving, and we entered the computer area now, and IBM, of course, was the leader in all of that kind of stuff. So I did that for 3 years, traveling a lot, not home much. And I decided, you know, I don't know, this life may not be for me. Well, luckily, I had a good district manager. I went to him, told him, you know, I need to change. You know, I've been doing this now for 3 years, and I need to stay home a little bit. So he said, okay, we got an opening for you. You can be the sales manager down in Houston. Packed up the family again, moved down to Houston. Stayed there and we had the financial industry, by the way, and plus a couple of other industries, but primarily financial. Everything was going great. Well, the Johnson Space Center opened up. Every company in the world started to move down to Houston. They all needed systems. We were selling them all kinds of systems. Boy, money was great. So I was there about 3 years, and rumors started to come around, feelers saying, well, you've been here 3 years now, you know, and that's a long time in one position. And it was at IBM at that time. And I said, maybe you need to go to headquarters in New York. Well, not yet. No, I don't think so. You know, give me a little more time. There's some things we need to really do here in Houston before that might happen. So about the 4.5 years, the pressure started building. You know, it's time for you to get out of here, because you know they were moving people around like every 2 years because they were trying to train people, you know, in new jobs all the time. So I was offered a job, product planning, up in Armonk, New York. So I don't think so. So I told him, no, I didn't want to do that. Just leave me alone. I'm doing a good job here. Everybody seems to be happy. Let's just leave status quo. No, the answer is no, you need to go. So I went home, told my wife, and she said, well, you know, that's what you want to do. You know, we'll pack up and go again. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. So I told IBM, my boss, I'm not going to take that job, and I'm not going back to be a salesman again. Now, at that time, you know, computers were going crazy. Everybody was buying computers and so on, and the competitors in the field at that time were looking for people who had experience in data processing. So naturally, they looked at IBMers and said, well, let's try and get this guy, let's try and get that guy, and so on. So I had several offers to leave the company. So I told them, I'm leaving. I had an offer to go back to Dallas, working to find a product for a company called DocuTel. That was a subsidiary of a company called Recognition Equipment Corporation. Now, I don't know if any of you know anything about them, but both companies are gone now. But anyhow, I was in charge of coming up with a product other than the baggage handling system that DocuTel already was producing. But the airline industry was rather flaky, you know, it was profitable 1 year, and next year they were about to go bankrupt and all that kind of stuff. So my job was to come up with a product in an industry other than the airline industry. I said, okay. So I started going around, traveling all over the United States, talking to people in various industries. What can we build for you? What do you need? What would you like to have? And after 4 months, I came up with nothing. And I'm getting very nervous now, because this was a relatively small company. We didn't have a lot of money, and how long would they put up with me? So I was traveling quite a bit. So on one Friday, I was in line at a bank to get some money to go on about a 3-day trip the following week. At that time, there were no branch branch banks in Texas. So I had to travel from Irving, where we were located, over to my bank in North Dallas. Anyhow, I get in line, and it wasn't moving, and it wasn't moving, and it was taking forever. And then it dawned on me that, you know, all I want is to cash a check. I just want to get some cash. And I thought, you know, maybe we could build a machine that dispensed cash. So I went back and talked to several engineers and told them what I had in mind. And they said, well, I think we could build a machine that would do that. So I sat down and anyhow, I'll make the story shorter. After a lot of studies and everything, I appeared before our board of directors at Recognition Equipment to present my idea of building a machine that would dispense cash to people, and the machine would be outdoors. Well, that went over, you know, like a lead balloon. You mean, yeah, machine? We got tellers that do that. Have you ever been in a bank, Mr. Wetzel? I said, yeah, but this is different, you know. Well, I was able to persuade them, if I made some more studies and came back with some better answers, they might consider it. So we did some studies, et cetera, about how many banks there were and how many branches there were, how many of these units we might sell to the banks, et cetera. And they finally approved that we would try and do this. You build the machine, so on. So we built the first ATM. That's what it was. We installed the first machine in 1969 at Chemical Bank in New York, and it was a success. And things were going really well. This was in 1969, we installed the first ATM. We were the first company to do that. And everything was going great. Everything was going great. We were starting to make some real progress in 1970. And then I found out that my wife had terminal cancer. I'm in Dallas, time, 4 children, and I didn't know what I was going to do, because we were living high on the hog. You know, I mean, we were selling machines at that time in 1970. We were selling a lot of ATM machines. Money was good, everything was good. I was traveling quite a bit, and I knew this is not good. Well, later part of that year, she died. So here I am with 4 young children. The oldest they were 7, 9, 11, and 13. What do I do? Well, I was very angry with God to start out with, because I had traveled a lot during the prior years. I wasn't home a lot, and my wife really raised the kids. And I felt guilty about that. Now she's gone. She didn't really get to enjoy the benefits of what we had now, because, you know, I was making good money and everything was good. She dies, and God, I mean, how can you do this, God? You know, she was a good person. Doesn't deserve that. And I was angry for many months. Anyhow, I decided, well, you don't have a choice. You know, you got to move on. So I decided, okay, I'll try and do less traveling. I found a lady, an elderly lady, who moved in with me at the house. She was caretaker for the kids and cooked, and, you know, she lived there. And everything was going good, and I was getting back on track. Everything was going all right. About 8 months later, I get a phone call from a neighbor. She says, I wonder if you'd be interested in going out with me and my husband and a friend of ours. Her husband was killed in a car wreck, and she hadn't been out of the house in over a year. Would you mind joining us and be with her as her date? And we go have dinner. I said, anybody, has been stuck at home, And before I could hang up, and I said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I thought, she deserves to go out. And I said, oh, by the way, she has 8 children. And I thought, oh boy, this is going to be a fun night. I envisioned this lady, she had to be like about 5'2", kind of wide, I don't know what kind of clothes she'd be wearing. Yeah. I thought, okay, I'll go along with it, So that was some evening, let me tell you. So anyhow, I'm moving along, and so on, and I'm just still with Docutel. I'm doing a fair amount of traveling. Business is great. I mean, we were selling ATMs like crazy. It really caught on in the mid to late 70s. In 71 and 72, everything was going great. So a couple of years later, I decided after a few dates that with this lady, we're going to get married. So we got married. And I married that little frumpy broad that had the 8 kids. So we wound up overnight with 12 children. So a new life began, as you can imagine, So here I am now. And, it was like 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 5, and 2. Wow. So anyhow, we got married, and then the third thing that happened, my wife died, I got married, and I'm beginning to think, this life is getting out of control. I'm traveling. Eleanor is home with 12 kids, some of them strangers, and here I am on the road living it up. I'm on airplanes, staying at New York City hotels, going to all the good restaurants, Everything was good, But it wasn't right. So my priorities started to change. My priorities early on, up until this time, was, by golly, I want to be somebody. I want to be a person who is recognized as successful, and I want to make money. Well, under the circumstances that I had then, things changed. My priorities changed. I decided, I can't. They got to change. The family's got to come first. So the third thing that happened was the company that I was working for, Docutel, was bought by a group of people, investors down in Houston, Texas. And I could tell almost immediately. Let me say this. At Docutel, we had a plan. We wanted to make this company grow. And at this time, we were about 100 people. And we were the only company selling ATMs. So, business was very good. We wanted to come up with additional products and watch us grow and grow and grow and grow. Well, when the new owners bought us, it became obvious to me anyhow that was not what they had in mind. What they wanted to do is sell as many ATMs as they possibly could, build up equity in the company, and then sell it to anybody who would buy it. And so that didn't sit well with me at all. So I thought, well, I better start thinking of changing. So I changed. I resigned. And I became a manufacturer's representative selling bank equipment. And I purposely avoided getting into the area of ATMs. I was selling vault doors, safe deposit boxes, drive-up stations, under-counter equipment, real sophisticated stuff. And after 1 year, everything was going well. everything was going good. And we were growing, we were adding a few people, and I was very happy. I was staying home for the most part. And things at home became a lot more pleasant. And then I realized that we needed more people. So I hired a Docutel salesman. And he, after about 6 months, he says, man, this isn't for me. He said, it's this unsophisticated cabinets and all that kind of stuff. I'm used to computers. I have an idea, he said. Let you and I form a company, and we'll be consultants to banks who might be interested in buying ATM machines. Okay, he knew all about computers, and I did too with my IBM experience. I knew ATMs. So we formed a second company. It was called Electronic Banking Systems. And that's what we did. And so what I did was I hired a fellow to be president of Financial Systems and Equipment. That was the first company. And then I worked, he and I worked at Electronic Banking Systems. And so we were successful. We started hiring people and so on, and everything was going great. We had 2 companies really rolling. So while I was at Electronic Banking Systems, I saw a product need. We needed a system that verified signatures electronically. The old days, the way you verified a signature, you had a big card file in the back office. And if somebody wanted to cash a big check, the teller left you. She went back there, saw the signature card, compared signatures, and came back and said, okay, I'll cash the check. Well, I thought we could do that electronically. And so I had a friend who I passed along the idea to. He said, well, how much money do you need? I said, I think we could build the first machine with about $250,000. He said, I can get it for you. And he did. So I formed a third company, which was called AutoSig Incorporated. And I hired people to run AutoSig. I was still at Electronic Banking Systems, and the other company, Financial Systems and Equipment, was still going. So there were 3 companies now. And everything was going great. We signed up with a data processing company at EBS to be their marketing arm of ATMs to all of the banks that they service. They process checks and deposits for all these smaller banks who didn't have their own computer systems. And everything was going great. We were really making money off of that deal. We sold them the ATMs. We got a commission from Docutel for that. We sold them supplies and a lot of mundane stuff that you make a lot of money off if you sell a lot of it. And we did. So one day the president of this data processing company calls up and says, I want to see your financial statements. Why? Well, I want to see how much money you're making. I said, well, that's none of your business. We're privately held. You're not going to see them. Now, this guy was the worst man I had ever met in the business world. He was mean, sarcastic, jumped all over his employees in public meetings, really bad. But he was very successful. He said, I will see your financial statements. I said, no, you won't. He said, okay, I got our contract right in front of me, and I'm tearing it up. As of tomorrow, you don't represent us. That was a big blow. And we were so naive, we were rolling in money when I signed that contract. And it was just a letter, didn't have a lawyer look at it or anything. So he said, you're out. So I had no recourse. So we lost it big. But anyhow, the company survived and we were doing well. And then things were rolling along very well. And then, of course, Docutel comes back at us and says, we want to buy you. What? You want to purchase electronic banking systems? And we go back to work for Docutel? Docutel had been bought, by the way, in the meantime, by Hallowed Corporation, which was an international company that was headquartered in Italy. And they wanted to get into the United States. So they offered us a lot of money, and so we sold the company to Docutel, and here I am back again working for Docutel. But fortunately, we just had a period of time that my partner and I had to do this. So we sold, and one condition, you hire everybody that is working at electronic banking systems, they must have a job over there at Docutel. And they said, okay. So my partner and I, we go over to Docutel, and it was too late. Docutel had done nothing with the ATM machines since I had left. It was and competition had moved in. They had better machines, much better. We couldn't turn things around, and so my partner and I, we left Docutel at that time. Now, at that time, I still had financial systems and equipment, and I also had AutoSig. So I decided, well, I'll just go to work down at AutoSig, which I did. And we had this electronic signature verification system that we were selling all over the place. Most all in the U.S., a few overseas, and it was going very well. So I did that, and I'm getting old now. You know, a lot of years had passed, and I'm approaching 60, and I was burned out. So I came home one day, and I told my wife, you know, I'm thinking about retiring. Well, after I picked her up off the floor, she said, I don't think you ought to do that. You know, I don't think so. And I said, well, I'm burned out. You know, I hate going to work in the morning and so on. Well, the long story short, I retired. And that was in I was 60 years old. That was in 1989. So that sort of gives you a background of where I was and where I've been and where I was at that point in time. My wife was scared to death because she thought, God, you're going to be around the house all day long. What in the world am I going to do? Yeah. Well, the secret, of course, is when you retire, you still stay active and you get involved in other things. And so that's sort of the background that I wanted to present to you. So what was I going to do? You know, I'm sitting around just trying to figure out what to do. Now I'd gotten involved in some things. When my wife died, I decided, I was going to move on. I had to stay busy, but I had to get involved in other things. So I decided, well, there are a lot of things out there that I could do if I volunteered, volunteer work. So I started to do some of that stuff. And as a result of that, I found out that, you know, you can be busy, you know, no problem there. Okay, I'll run along. I had a couple of stories I was going to tell you about. You know, my faith played a big part in what I was now getting into. And even when I was working, my faith played a role. A couple of quick incidences. When I was a salesman at IBM, I called on this purchasing agent, and he politely told me, it was Christmas time, and he said, you know, I'm getting to place a big order for some IBM cards. And, you know, I'd like to do business with you. But I've got, you know, you've got some competitors, and it's Christmas time, and, you know, I like to entertain some of my people and family around Christmas time. And Jack Daniels is what I like to serve. And I said, well, I can't help you there because, you know, we have a policy that says we don't give presents to people to get their business. And I lost the business, which IBM had had for, gosh, I guess 30 years. Another example was when I was with AutoSig, the vice president of operations, we sold our signature verification system to distributors. And we had this big account in Chicago that we never could seem to close. They were very interested, but we never could get the order. So I get a phone call one day, or our vice president gets a phone call from another distributor in the Chicago area saying, I can get that order for you. So the vice president said, I'll call you back in a day, let you know, we'd like to do business with you. We had exclusive contracts at that time. So we had a meeting, and I said, well, we can't let him take the order because we have a contract that's exclusive. Our distributor needs to get the order. Oh, well, that didn't go over well at all. I said, well, I'm sorry, but, that's the way we're going to do it. At that time, I was chairman of the company, and so I just had to lean on him. I said, we're not going to do that. It's unethical, and we're not going to do that. So it took us a while, but we finally got the order. We worked out a deal with our distributor to work out a deal with his competitor. So it worked out. So you run into these kind of situations where, you have to draw the line sometime. You can't let business dictate how you're going to run your life and live your life. And there are a few other things like that, but that come about. But they're just irritants, but you have to stay in your ground. And I was able to do that. I wasn't always able to do it, by the way, but I did most of the time. I had a situation, I won't go into that one because I'm running out of time. In retrospect, looking back now, I learned a number of things that I'd like to share with you for whatever they're worth. I kind of figured I was fairly successful. I was overly ambitious. I wanted to make a lot of money, to my fault, and I wanted to climb up that ladder of success. And I believe what Michelangelo said centuries ago. He said the greater danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but that it is too low and we reach it. Now, I think there's a lot of truth in that statement, but as long as it's balanced with other values. You just can't say, I'm going to make money regardless of anything. I learned that. And I learned also in aspects of life, not just business, but you have to make very difficult decisions. And I was faced with a number of those, leaving IBM when my wife died, remarrying, and then branching out and losing the big account, all of that kind of stuff. As Bill Cosby once said, I don't know the key to success, but the key to failure is trying to please everybody. And I believe that's very true. You have to take a stand sometimes, and some people are not going to like it. So anyhow, I decided at that time I would go on an annual retreat. I was still angry with God, by the way, because he let my wife die. I was angry. I went on retreat, a Jesuit retreat at Montserrat Retreat House. Anybody been there? It's a silent retreat for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and half a Sunday. Very good. I highly recommend it. I was on that retreat, and I was praying before the Blessed Sacrament, and I hear this thing in my mind. Get off of it, man. You're angry, but you don't have cause to be. Your wife was a super lady, and I decided to reward her by taking her into heaven. She was 35. Now get on with it. Quit feeling sorry for yourself. And it was just like somebody just hit me over the head. I said, by golly, you're right. And so I moved on with my life, and, well, you know the story. I got remarried and all that kind of stuff. So when I was on retreat, I got to, I say the rosary every day. And so I started looking at the words a little more closely, and it was, I got to the words, hallowed be thy name. And I thought, hallow, I'm really not sure I know what that word means. Hallowed be thy name. So I go to the dictionary, and the dictionary says, it said to revere. Hallow means to revere. And I said, well, I didn't even have a good idea what revere meant. So I go back to revere. And so revere means that you be active in your life, in your spiritual life, and you do something about it. So you revere God. So start doing. I decided, well, I got to start doing something. I'm not doing anything. So I decided, well, it's not enough to be a good Catholic. You must live your Catholic faith. You must let people know you are Catholic. And I didn't do much of that when I was working. So I decided, I just need to do some of that stuff and quit thinking about climbing the ladder of success. When it changed my life. It really did. And that's what I've been doing since I retired. I've been involved in many things regarding the church, social activities that were helping people who needed help, things of that nature. And it's just beautiful how I get so much satisfaction out of doing things for other people. I also found out that there are tons of people out there waiting to be asked to do something good. It's amazing. I don't know if you remember, we had a rosary crusade here in Dallas in the year 2005 at the Cotton Bowl. Anybody remember that? Okay. Well, that was the time when the priests were getting involved with the young people, and the Catholic Church was being blasted by newspapers and TVs and everything like that. And so a priest came into town and said, we need to do something about that. And we had lunch at a home for him with 5 couples. And he jumps up and says, I know what we need to do. We're going to have a big event at the Cotton Bowl. And we'll have 50,000 people show up. We'll say the rosary. We'll have an international rosary. And we'll have benediction. And a bishop will speak. So I'm sitting there thinking, sure. Yeah. 3 couples said, oh, yeah, we'd be a part of that. And Eleanor and I said, yeah, we'd be a part of that. Thinking, well, he's going to go out of town tomorrow, and that'll be the end of that deal. Well, the darn priest came back. We had the event, and we had 24,000 people at the Cotton Bowl. And it was a huge event. And it was really big for our diocese, the Catholic Diocese of Dallas, because we were the first diocese who had the priest who committed the first pedophile acts. That was around 2005. Anyhow, the church got united. So I guess basically what I'm saying is we need not to just be Catholics, we need to live our Catholic faith. Get out there and do something. Be active. I don't know, how many of you have asked somebody to join the YCP? Yeah. How many? You do that? You need to do that. Yeah. I know you do, yeah. So, you just have to do things. When's the last time you invited somebody to go to Mass with you? who's not Catholic? When have you invited a former Catholic, a fallen away Catholic, to join you in some event that's going on? We need to do more of that. And people are waiting to be asked. I'll tell you one quick story. When we were trying to raise money for the big event at the Cotton Bowl, we needed to raise about $110,000 to pay for everything. And we didn't know where we were going to get it. So there's about 3 of us. Well, we just go out and start talking to people. That's the best thing we can do. I called on a fellow I knew, didn't know him real well, but he was Catholic and he had money. So I go see him and I tell him why we want to have this big event at the Cotton Bowl, because the Catholic Church is being blasted. The Dallas Morning News at that time was just almost every day, front page story about some priest or the Catholic Church or something like that. It was really bad. So I told him what we wanted to do. He said, I'll give you $25,000. Just like that. I said, no, wait a minute. We don't even have a 1C3 yet. I can't take your check. He said, can you hold off a couple of days? I think you get approval soon from the state. He gave us a matching gift of $25,000 simply because I went out and I asked him to do that. One other quick story and then I'll end. There was a fellow I worked with who wondered where I went every year from Thursday to Sunday. And he asked me, what do you do when you go? You leave, where do you go? I said, I go on a retreat. He was not Catholic. He was an elder in the Presbyterian church. He said, a retreat, what is a retreat? So I told him. I said, would you like to go? I can get you in. He said, well, I'm not Catholic. I said, you don't have to be Catholic. He came. For the next 7 years, in the meantime, he moved to Tampa. But for the next 7 years, he flew back to Dallas and went on the same retreat that I went on. I go on retreat every year, by the way, for the last 34 years. So on the 8th year, I called him to let him know when it was going to be. And he said, well, I can't come. Tied up. What do you mean you're tied up? You go every year. Well, I'm in RCIA, and I'm going into the church that weekend. I asked him if he wanted to go on a retreat. Look what happened. A year later, his wife, who was very anti-Catholic during their marriage, she became Catholic. So, we can do many good things if we just have a positive attitude and let people know who we are and what we think about our faith. So let me end. I have something here. I'm going to read it, if I can find it. It's a reflection that I read. I read this at least a couple of times every year. And it's entitled, What Will Matter? Ready or not, someday it will all come to an end. There will be no more sunrises, no days, no hours or minutes. All the things you collected, whether treasured or forgotten, will pass to someone else. Your wealth, fame, and temporal power will shrivel to irrelevance. It will not matter what you owned or what you were owed. Your grudges, resentments, frustrations, and jealousies will finally disappear, so too your hopes, ambitions, plans, and to-do lists will all expire. The wins and losses that once seemed so important will fade away. It won't matter where you came from or what side of the tracks you lived. It won't matter whether you're beautiful or brilliant. Your gender, skin color, ethnicity will be irrelevant. So what will matter? How will the value of your days be measured? What will matter is not what you bought, but what you built. Not what you got, but what you gave. What will matter is not your success, but your significance. What will matter is not what you learned, but what you taught. What will matter is every act of integrity, compassion, courage, and sacrifice that enriched, empowered, or encouraged others to emulate your example. What will matter is not your competence, but your character. What will matter is not how many people you knew, but how many will feel a lasting loss when you're gone. What will matter is not your memories, but the memories of those who loved you. What will matter is how long you will be remembered, by whom, and for what. Living a life that matters doesn't happen by accident. It's not a matter of circumstance, but of choice. Choose to live a life that matters. Thank you.